What if I told you that the reason why so many of your goals never come to life is because they have no name? It's not that you're lazy or you lack discipline, it's because what you're trying to build is nameless. And anything without a name struggles to exist. There's a principle you need to understand. Everything that has a name exists, and everything that exists has a name. Before anything is named, it's just a thought, an idea, a possibility, but once you give it a name, you separate it from everything else. You give it identity, boundaries, and a place in reality. And that is why businesses are named before they even grow, movements are named before they even spread, and systems are named before they work. If it has no name, it has no form. If it has no form, it has no direction. And if it has no direction, it will not survive. There is something powerful I need you to think about. The name of a thing is actually the purpose of that thing, and in some sense, the expected end of that thing, or what is expected of that. Everything that exists, whether it's a person, a business, a concept, it has a name. Think of the most random thing you have ever seen, and I guarantee you there's a name for that thing. And that is not random. And if anything, naming was actually the first thing that was assigned to human being, according to the Bible. Yes, the first job we ever had was to name things, because naming is not just labeling, naming is defining, naming is assigning identity, and naming is giving life to something. So today I want to show you how giving a name to your goals, your ideas, or even your identity can completely change your life. And that brings us to section 1. Everything has a name. Think about it. Nothing exists without a name. We have day and night, we have land and sea, we have stars, we have moons. Everything actually has a name. Even the most random feeling that you have, there's a name for that thing. Countries, businesses, emotions, all these things have a name for a reason. And that is because naming does three things. Number 1, naming gives identity. Secondly, naming gives purpose. And the last one is naming something sets an expectation for that thing. Say for instance, if I say the name Apple, you don't just think of the word Apple, you think of a brand, you think of an identity, you think of a purpose. If I say the word doctor, you already think of a responsibility, a role, and a purpose for that name. That is to say, a name tells you what something is and what it is to become. But here's the problem. So many people have goals, but they have no name for those goals. And because your goals have no name, they have no identity, they have no purpose, and they have no expected end to it. Which brings us to section 2. Nameless goals do not survive. Let's be honest, at some point in your life, you have said something like, I want to be successful, I want to save money, I want to do this, and I want to do that. But what does that actually mean? It's vague, it's shapeless, and it's nameless. And anything that is nameless is easy to forget, ignore, or even abandon. Now, instead of you saying, I want to be successful, compare that to you saying, Project Financial Freedom 2026. Or instead of saying, oh, I need to make more money, you could actually say something like Operation Debt Free 2026. I hope you get the picture I'm trying to paint. There should be a name for every single goal, and the name of that thing should define that thing. And instead of you saying, I want to be disciplined, you could say something like my 5 a.m. discipline system. Like, have a system and name that system. Do you see the difference? The moment you name something, that thing becomes real in some sense. It becomes structured and it becomes something you can commit to. That is to say, a name turns an idea into a mission. Which then brings us to section 3. Naming creates responsibility. When something has a name, you relate to that thing differently. Imagine 2 scenarios. Scenario A, I'm trying to save money, and scenario B, I am building my financial freedom fund. Which of these scenarios feels more powerful to you? The second one, and that is because it now has an identity, it has a purpose, and it has an emotional weight behind it, because now you sort of know exactly what you're working towards. You cannot easily abandon something that has a name. If you say, for instance, I want to save money, it's easy for you to just forget about it because, oh, I want to save money. You hear that every day. But then if you have a purpose, like I'm saving towards buying a car, I'm saving towards buying a house, it now has a name and a purpose, and therefore you cannot easily forget that thing. And that is why when you see businesses that are successful, they don't just say something like we sell a product. They build their brand around a name, and anywhere you hear that name, that brand comes to mind. A name creates ownership around something and responsibility around that thing as well. Which now brings us to a life-defining chapter, section 4. Eventually you become the very thing you are called. Now let's go deeper into this. Name doesn't just shape things, it shapes people as well. Some people believe that they're smart or not good enough or introverted or extroverted or confident. Why exactly is that? That is because these are the names you have been given directly or indirectly. When you hear something repeatedly, you start to believe that. Say for instance, growing up, if all you ever heard is people saying that you're shy or you don't talk, eventually you pick that up as your personality, and that now becomes your identity. If you tell someone that they're smart over and over again, eventually they will do everything to stay smart or to become smart, because that's the name people give you, and you want to maintain that as your identity. You are quiet, you are not smart, you are difficult. Eventually, you come to accept these names as your identity, because over time, you don't just hear it, you become it. A name is not just a label. A name is an identity that you grow into. Now, let's flip this. What if you started naming yourself differently? What if you start saying, I am disciplined, I'm a builder, I am smart, I'm intelligent, I am consistent, and you say this to yourself over and over again? At first, it's going to feel strange, but the more you say that, the more you start to act in alignment with that very thing that you say, because naturally, humans goals try to live up to the name that they carry, which then brings us to the most important section so far: how to use names to change your life. So how do you actually apply all these things I've been talking about? We have 3 steps that you need to follow. The first thing is name your goals. Stop saying things like, I want to save money, I want to become disciplined. Start saying things like, I'm working on project 100k, project 50k, project 10k. Give a name to something and let that name define the purpose of that thing. Say for instance, if you say I'm working on project 50k, the name defines the purpose. We know that you're saving towards 50k. Does that make sense? Give your goals a name that reflects the final result of that thing or the end result of that thing. The second thing is name your systems. Don't rely on motivations. Every single system that you have needs to have a name. Say for instance, I have something called a money reset routine, I have a no spend challenge, I have a project plan. All these are systems that I have a name for, and whenever I remember that name, I sort of know the purpose of that thing, and it's easier to stick to that. When your systems have a name, they become more structured and repeatable. And the next step is name yourself. Don't let other people define you. This is the most powerful one. Decide who you want to become and start calling yourself by that name, not based on your past or your present, but based on your future. The identity you give yourself is going to shape your actions, and your actions will shape your results. Because the truth is, if you don't name yourself, other people will. If you don't define yourself, your environment will define you. And if you fail to give your goals names, they just remain ideas. Don't get stuck in dreaming and planning about your goals. Have a name for those goals. Because the moment you give it a name, you give it a direction, a purpose, and you give it life. At this point, I want you to stop and reflect and ask yourself, what are the goals in your life that has no name? Because that might just be the reason why you haven't achieved them yet. If this video helped you in any way, don't forget to share with someone, and also like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.